The woman at the next table was already laughing when the check hadn't even arrived yet. Not a soft laugh, not a nervous one. It was sharp, careless, the kind that lands like a slap. I'm sorry, she said, standing up and grabbing her purse, but this is ridiculous. Daniel Harry sat frozen in his chair, hands folded neatly on the table. Around him, the restaurant buzzed with Friday night energy, glasses clinking, couples leaning in close, waiters weaving through tables. No one else seemed to notice the way his chest tightened. Is it something I said? Daniel asked quietly. She shook her head, still smiling like it was all a joke. No, it's what you didn't say. You're just boring. A driver. Really? My dad set me up with a driver. Daniel nodded once. Yes, Mom. I drive supply trucks. She laughed again, louder this time, and people glanced over. Wow, this is actually kind of sad. Then she turned and walked out, heels clicking sharply against the floor, laughter trailing behind her like smoke. Daniel didn't move. He waited until the door closed before he exhaled. He'd worn his best shirt. Ironed it twice. Even polished his old watch, the one he never talked about. He hadn't been on a date in years, not since his wife passed away. When Colonel Thomas Walker, his former commanding officer, had suggested setting him up with his daughter, Daniel had hesitated. She's brilliant, the colonel had said proudly. Independent, strong. I think you'd like her. Daniel hadn't expected this. He left cash on the table, nodded politely to the confused waiter, and stepped outside into the cool night air. His shoulders were slightly hunched, not from age, but from habit, years of carrying weight no one could see. Across the parking lot, the woman, Emily, was already on her phone, animated, probably telling someone how awful the date had been. Daniel didn't linger. He walked to his truck, climbed in, and sat there for a moment with his hands on the steering wheel. Rejection wasn't new to him. But tonight, it stung in a different way. The next morning, Daniel reported to the distribution yard at dawn, like always. He drove long routes delivering medical and military supplies, quiet work, honest work. The younger drivers joked around him, never guessing the stories behind the faint scars on his forearms or the disciplined way he checked mirrors. Daniel didn't talk about his past. Not about the years overseas. Not about the lives saved or the ones lost. When people asked, he simply said, I used to serve. That was enough. Across town, Emily Walker sat at her father's kitchen table, sipping coffee while scrolling on her phone. So, Colonel Walker said, folding his newspaper, how was dinner? Emily groaned. Dad, please don't ever do that to me again. He raised an eyebrow. That bad. He was nice, she admitted, but dull. No ambition. No spark. A truck driver. I mean, come on. The colonel didn't respond right away. He took a slow sip of coffee, eyes thoughtful. Did he mention his service? He asked. Emily Asragad. Barely, said he used to serve. That's it. No stories, no rank, nothing. Colonel Walker nodded once. That sounds like Daniel. Emily frowned. You know him well. Well enough, her father said quietly. A few days later, the city hosted a public ceremony honoring veterans. Emily attended reluctantly, mostly out of obligation. Her father was scheduled to speak, and she didn't want to disappoint him. The square was crowded, families, flags, children perched on shoulders. Emily stood near the front, arms crossed, only half listening as names were read and medals mentioned. Then the announcer's voice changed. We now recognize a man whose actions saved 32 lives as under enemy fire. A man who refused evacuation until a very wounded soldier was accounted for. Emily's attention snapped up. Staff Sergeant Daniel Harris. Her breath caught. From the side of the stage, Daniel stepped forward, wearing a simple suit. His posture was straight, controlled, eyes forward. The crowd applauded, unaware of the weight behind that calm expression. Emily turned instinctively toward her father. Colonel Walker was already standing. And then, slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand and saluted. It wasn't casual. It wasn't symbolic. It was the kind of salute given only to someone you respect with your life. Emily's heart began to pound. She watched as the medal was placed around Daniel's neck. She heard fragments of the story, how his convoy was ambushed, how he carried men to ice his eyes through gunfire, how he refused painkillers so he could stay alert. How he never once mentioned it afterward. Daniel didn't smile. He simply nodded, accepted the honor, and stepped back. Emily felt something twist painfully in her chest. After the ceremony, she pushed through the crowd, ignoring the looks of surprise when she reached her father. "Dad," she whispered, shaken, "why didn't you tell me?" Colonel Walker looked at her for a long moment. "Because he didn't want me to." She swallowed. I laughed at him. Her father's voice softened. "Daniel Harris is the reason I'm alive. And the reason you grew up with a father." Emily's eyes burned. She found Daniel near the edge of the square, already turning to leave. "Daniel," she called out. He stopped, surprised, then turned. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by polite distance. "Miss Walker," he said evenly. I'm sorry," she blurted out. "About the other night. I was cruel." He shook his head gently. "No apology needed. We weren't a match." "That's not true," she said quickly. "I didn't see you. I didn't even try." Daniel studied her, searching for something, pity, maybe. He found none, only sincerity. "People see what they expect," he said quietly. "I'm used to that." Her voice trembled. "Can I make it up to you? Just coffee. No assumptions." He hesitated, then nodded once. "Coffee is fine." They sat in a small cafe, the mood entirely different from before. This time, Emily listened. She learned about his wife, his quiet grief, the reason he drove trucks, because he still believed in delivering things that mattered. Daniel learned about her fears, her pressure to succeed, the armor she wore without realizing it. There were challenges, awkward silences, guilt, Daniel's instinct to retreat, but slowly, honesty replaced pride. Weeks passed. Coffee became conversations. Conversations became trust. Emily never laughed at him again. Months later, as they stood together watching a sunset, Emily realized something simple and profound. The strongest people don't announce their strength. They carry it quietly, until someone finally learns how to see. And sometimes, the moment that humbles you the most is the one that teaches you how to love.